Hello, and welcome back to our search for the best storyteller in Are You Afraid of the Dark? With 3 seasons behind us, we're ready to take a look at the episodes in the penultimate season of what's known as the original series. If you haven't seen the videos on the previous 3 seasons, then I highly recommend you give those a watch, as I do reference a lot of previous episodes. Plus, this show's just flat out amazing, and every season is worth a watch. And with that said, let's talk about Season 4. As with the previous seasons, Are You Afraid of the Dark is a show all about a group of misfit teens who love to get together and tell scary stories. Together they make a club called the Midnight Society, and as they bond over their love for spooky tales, they grow closer together and find true friendships forming between them. Season 4 is the first and only season that does not say goodbye or introduce new members to the Midnight Society. In Season 1, Frank joined the crew, Season 2 saw Eric leave, and in Season 3 we saw a departure of Kristen and David, while adding along Sam and Tucker. So we don't have any incredibly sad monologues in the first episode, and we won't have any initiation stories this season. Instead, we'll continue to hear stories from the same 6 Midnight Society members, with Gary, who tells tales of pirate treasure and rampant viruses, Betty Ann, who tells us about the dangers of scarecrows and comic book worlds, Kiki with her stories on silence and alien tourism, Tucker with his elemental fears of water and fire, Sam with her tragic tales of long-lost love, and Frank, who's moved on from his fear of soup and now realizes the true horror of trains. This series continues to be incredible, and I'm happy to say that Season 4 is a time when the show hits a great stride and even gives us some of the best and scariest stories that we've seen so far. If you do end up enjoying this video, then please leave a like and consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on future videos. And, as always, submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I ask the question, who tells the best scary story in Are You Afraid of the Dark? Season 4. The first episode of this season is told by Gary, and let's just say that this season starts out swinging. This is the tale of the Renegade Virus, and I've been excited to talk about this episode since I first started covering the series, and pretty soon I'm sure you'll see why. For a quick intro, we see someone sitting at a computer while the screen is flashing with a warning and a skull and crossbones. But that's only a quick glimpse before we cut to the next morning to see a boy named Simon who seems to have everything going for him. He swishes a basketball, enjoys some breakfast with his family, throws the old pigskin with his best friend Evan, only to use that moment to just steal Evan's bike so that he can get to school, where he asks out his crush Sonia and gets to class to ace some tests. Unfortunately, this great morning was mostly a detriment to Evan. He was late for school, he wanted to ask Sonia out but missed his shot, and now he's late for class. It seems like this sort of thing is pretty common between these two, as they constantly prank each other back and forth, and this was retribution for Evan putting a rotten egg in Simon's shoe. So, it seems a little bit mean, but it's also just friends being friends.
Yeah, right.
Also, I know I haven't talked about the fashion in this show in a little while, but I can't help but point out Evan's shirt because, I mean, just look at it. It's like 4 different shirts sewn together. I've never seen anything like it, and honestly I hope I never will again because it's pretty awful. After class, Evan grabs Simon and he's all excited because their science teacher, Mr. Poe, has just finished work on his video game. And I love Mr. Poe's office. It's just covered with old radio equipment and these weird like square gears. Oh, and apparently he's a huge deal because he's launching up his video game and then he gets a call from the freaking president of the United States.
Mr. Poe, the president is on the phone.
I'm reluctant to work with the government. Too much paperwork.
Even though the show's Canadian, getting a call from the US president's gotta be a big deal, right? So, Mr. Poe was working on a series of virtual reality games, and Simon and Evan are his lucky students who get to play the prototypes.
It makes you feel like you're really there.
The technology is in its infancy, but the possibilities are endless.
Mr. Poe has to go speak with the president, so he gets Simon all geared up and launches the program, leaving Evan to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Before he heads out of the office, he does notice a familiar looking warning and skull and crossbones, but then they morph into a smiley face, so I'm sure everything's gonna be just fine. As the program boots up, Simon suddenly wakes back up at home.
It was all a dream. Too bad.
But we know better than that, and soon Simon does too, as he walks through his now empty house, calling for his family, but finding no one. Then he starts to notice some strange things. Glitchy blue versions of his family around the dinner table, the radio isn't working and only plays static, his bike riding itself through the hallway. He searches through the rooms, and when he enters the computer room, he finds this. This guy is so cool, just like a little metallic dude with his brain exposed. And of course, Simon has tons of questions, so we learn a little bit about what's going on.
This isn't your house, Einstein. You're still in the game, Einstein. Except that the rules have changed. I'm a virus. That's what I do.
So this virus has the goal of leaving cyberspace. It's created a program that will allow it to exit the virtual reality, and it'll do this by using a port that it programs into Simon's hand. And this effect looks so gruesome, how it's all swollen and red, and it sometimes looks like it's oozing. But this is a game, and with that comes a few limitations. The program has a 10-minute timer before it can run, and there's one single rule that this world runs by.
Rule number 1. I win. You lose.
That's not fair.
Okay, so it's a bogus rule, but Simon does have 10 minutes to try and escape the game. The first thing he tries is just removing the VR helmet, and when he does, he finds himself back with Simon and Mr. Poe, and he tells them all about the virus. But Mr. Poe isn't too happy to hear this.
I will not sit still and let you insult my life's work. Get up.
But
I said out!
Simon is clearly still in the game, as he finds the school hallways are locked and the port in his hand is still there. And the virus has made this place seem like a nightmare as everyone begins to walk backwards, and when he goes to class, Simon appears in nothing but his underwear. He runs into the hall and finds the virus is there watching and taunting him.
The speed of light divided by the speed of sound equals 5. 5 minutes left.
Also, his bike is all locked up with a giant padlock. I love big dumb props like this. They're just so fun and so funny to see in shows. Simon rushes back home and gets back to his computer where he sees Evan, who seems to be in the real world but observing what Simon is going through.
Somebody planted a virus.
it was you, wasn't it?
So, Evan just wants an apology for Simon embarrassing him this morning, but when Simon apologizes, Evan realizes that he's locked out. The virus has gone off program and it's now controlling things in the game. And Evan can't shut it down from the outside, so Simon will have to do it himself.
This is your 2-minute warning.
Now, this whole sequence is so fun because Simon is trying to figure out the code to help him escape, and while he does, we see the virus getting closer, and it's so goofy and so funny. First, it's riding a bike through the front door, and then it just slides up the banister backwards.
Going up.
And finally, it reaches the office, and this chair slides out of the way as the door is kicked down. I love this virus. It's so fun. Finally, Simon figures out the code, but just before he hits enter, he's strapped to the chair.
I told you. Rule number 1. I win. You lose.
Pulling off his glove, the virus shows a cord that he'll put into Simon's hand port, but Simon just leans forward and hits enter to abort the program. He finds himself back in the real world and instantly forgives Evan for nearly killing him. Just before the episode ends, we see the virus might have made it into the real world after all. But that's a story for another time. Or, well, actually it's a story for never because there's no part 2 to this. This this is just where it ends. I love this episode so much. It's another example of exactly what I look for in this series. It's such a weird and fun premise. It's like the perfect mixture of strange and scary that Are You Afraid of the Dark just does so well. I think the story is pretty good. We haven't seen much tech-based horror yet in the series, so it's a really fun mix-up. It's got a good setup, some great character development, one of the best villains in the series so far, an intense climax, and a small cliffhanger ending. I'm going with a nearly perfect 9 out of 10 for the story score. This one is also decently scary, but it does feel more like a horror comedy to me rather than pure horror. The virus alone is so funny with his deviousness. He just went off with so many good goofy little moments and lines. Still, it is a pretty frightening idea to be trapped with a virus that wants to take over your mind. The fear of escaping the VR world is pretty palpable throughout the full episode. The hand port is pretty gross, which, that's like scary adjacent. And despite his funny moments, the virus did have some pretty scary moments as well. I'm gonna go with a 7 out of 10 for this one. And then the bonuses for this episode. There's so much that I love. The effects and the big dumb props are some of my favorites. The glitchy family, the port in the hand, the giant lock, the people walking backwards, the bike riding through the hall, the virus going up the banister. For all that, I'm gonna go with 2 points. And I'm giving another 2 points for the virus himself. I love the way he looks, and like I mentioned earlier, he's one of my favorite villains in the series, so it's going to be a total of 4 out of 5 bonus points, which leaves the tale of the Renegade Virus with a total score of 20 out of 25, and starting off season 3 on an incredible note. Episode 2 is a story from Sam, and it's called The Tale of the Long Ago Locket. Last season, she had one story that was all about the scares and another that was all about love. And for this episode, she's putting another tick into that love category. Because, unfortunately for the main character named Jimmy, he can't figure out how to tell his crush April that he really likes her. He tries to ask her out a few times, but always stumbles on his words and backs off. And I know what you're probably thinking. What's a love story without a time-shifting forest filled with soldiers from the Civil War? Yeah, that's where this episode's going. One day, Jimmy's walking home through the forest when he's scared by a strange man in the woods. The man grabs Jimmy and tells him to run just as a group of redcoat soldiers burst from the trees and start to shoot at them. The two hide behind a wall, and just before they're stabbed by a soldier, everyone disappears and leaves Jimmy alone with nothing but a small brass object which he takes to an antique specialist guy to figure out what it is.
It's a button from a Minuteman uniform. If I didn't know better, I'd say a Minuteman had worn this very day.
The next day, Jimmy, April, and their buddy Josh are playing some frisbee when Jimmy just yeets it into the woods. This is the excuse that gets him to go back into the woods alone, but it also reminds me a lot of this video.
What the Richard?
When he goes into the woods, Jimmy gets captured by a group of redcoats, and he's tied up and marched towards what's called the hanging tree. But that strange man from before shoots into the air and uses that distraction to free Jimmy. He then tells us of his quest for love. All he wants is to get to a town called Harrisville where the girl of his dreams is waiting, and he wants nothing more than to confess his love for her because he was always too afraid to do it in the past.
I once tried to tell her I loved her. I looked into her eyes, but the words weren't there.
Also, we learn that the year Jimmy is being teleported to is 1780, and the man gives Jimmy his knife as a physical memento of their new friendship. They're shot at again, but Jimmy exits the woods and he appears back in the present day. He goes back to the antique guy and finds that the knife is engraved with the name Lieutenant William, and the antique dude knows this name from the history books. He gives Jimmy a copy of one passage that reads that on September 17th of 1780, Lieutenant William was captured and hanged. September 17th is relevant for 2 reasons. The first is because That is today. In the show. It's September 17th, which means that today Jimmy will need to do something to try and rescue his new friend. But the second and way more important reason why September 17th is important is because that is my birthday. Yeah, that's right. The show writers totally put this in just for me, and that means I'm basically part of this series, so I'm kind of a big deal, and just for the record, you're all invited to my birthday party. You're all invited. So after school, Jimmy rushes back into the woods, but he's stopped by his friends who are really worried about him, and his explanation doesn't make them any less worried.
I was escaping from redcoats. Red what?
He ends up just snatching Josh's boombox and then sprinting back into the woods. He rushes to the hanging tree, which is a local landmark, by the way. It's such a great piece of history to be remembered by everyone. And at this tree, he finds Lieutenant William being prepped for his hanging. Jimmy then uses the boombox to distract the soldiers and free William. I wish so bad that we got a scene of the soldiers just shooting and stabbing the boombox because they thought it was the devil or like some, weird witch magic or something. But no, they just knock it over and then turn to see their prisoner is escaping. It's a missed opportunity for sure. Jimmy and William make their escape, and Jimmy tells him a secret route to Harrisville that William can use to get to his love without being captured. And then William departs, giving a little bit of advice before vanishing forever.
Don't make my mistake. If you love her, tell her.
Yeah, I will. Go.
Jimmy gets the soldiers' attention to ensure that they don't follow William, and as he runs away, he crashes right into April and has a laugh as he finds that the soldiers are gone now, and the only thing chasing him is this girl in a red jacket.
Okay, bye.
He finally tells April how he feels, and they both watch together as the engraving on the knife changes from Lieutenant William to Captain William, which proves that he must have survived this time in history. He and April walk down the trail, hand in hand, and that's where this episode ends. I thought this one was alright. It's definitely not my favorite, but it is a fun idea. It reminds me a lot of a better version of The Midnight Ride. We've got a love story, we've got horse chases, a little bit of time wackiness, but where The Midnight Ride was full of awful characters, this one has very likable and well-acted characters. That being said, it is a little bit messy in its story. The time traveling was done a lot with really rapid in-between scenes, so it was a little bit forceful in its ways that got Jimmy into the woods over and over, and then the whole tell her you love her thing was kind of shoved into those scenes and didn't feel very natural in the storytelling to me. I'm gonna give this one a 5 out of 10. It also just, like, it wasn't scary. It's got that classic Kristen vibe where the focus was clearly on the story rather than the scares. I guess being shot at a bunch is pretty frightening, but that's about it. So I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10 for the scares. And for the bonuses, I'm giving 1 for that great frisbee throw. It just makes me laugh every time that I think about it. And I'll give another for my birthday because I like my birthday and I really want cake and ice cream. So 2 out of 5 bonus points, which will leave the tale of the Long Ago Locket with a total score of 9 out of 25. For episode 3, we get Tucker's first story of the season. A lot of times Tucker shows up at the campfire after having done some kind of prank to Gary or Frank, so his stories tend to have themes of lessons that he's learned or wants others to learn so that they don't beat him up as retribution. And the tale of the water demons is no exception. This one is about 2 cousins named Sean and Dean. Sean is the bad kid rebel sent to live with his cousin for the summer since his parents couldn't handle him any longer, and we see him stealing candy from his uncle's shop, so we know he's a troublemaker. Meanwhile, Dean's just a good kid who's constantly trying to wrangle in his cousin. A delivery request comes to the shop one day and promises a tip, so Sean is all about it. He and Dean head over to the mansion of a crazy rich local man named Captain Abraham Westchester, who got all of his riches from plundering sunken ships to add to his collection, which he displays in his home. Sean notices a pretty looking gold compass, but he and Dean end up walking away, so I'm sure that won't be important at all moving forward. After completing the delivery, the cousins accidentally stumble upon a secret room and find the captain inside. But he's strangely frightened.
Sorry I've disturbed you.
Both of the cousins find this man to be extremely strange. He's super jittery and constantly downing coffee, and he explains that he hasn't been sleeping much.
I don't think I've had more than a cat nap for the last 3 years.
He says that his lack of sleep comes from a curse that he got from plundering treasure, as he disturbed the spirits of the sea, known as water demons. Obviously the kids don't believe him, so they share a glance and peace out. But we do get a glimpse of the captain's display case and notice that a certain golden compass is now missing. I wonder where that could have gone. Well, we can't dwell on it for long because the captain falls asleep and we see the sea begin to bubble and fog and the water demons begin to stumble upon the shore. But they vanish the moment the captain startles awake. That night, Sean gets into an argument with his uncle and storms out of the house to find a new place to sleep. And what do you know? The captain has a comfy hammock right outside his mansion. He tucks in for a nice snooze, but uh-oh, the captain's coffee is failing him and he ends up falling asleep at the same time. So a few moments later, Sean is visited by the water demons. Sean runs to hide in the captain's shack as the undead close in on him and threaten to pull him towards the sea. He arms up with an air horn, which happens to be the best weapon of all time since it wakes up the captain and causes all of the demons to disappear. Also, Dean is here now. He went looking for his cousin earlier and he also saw the water demons, so the cousins are all caught up. I love the green goopy handprints that the demons leave on Sean's shirt, but the captain doesn't share my sentiment.
It's the mark of the water demon. Get inside, quickly!
The boys and the captain realize that they have to come up with a plan, and Dean says that if the water demons are after the captain because of his treasures, then maybe they should return it all to the sea. And the captain is desperate enough to think that that's a great idea.
You know something, lad? You might be right. This all has to go back. Every last bit of it.
And even though they're reluctant, the captain convinces the boys to help them with the task.
Remember, my friend, they're after you too. Once they know you, they're not going to stop.
While they're helping load the treasure into the captain's boat, Dean puts his glasses on a barrel. Why? Great question. But a second later, Sean turns with a board and bonks the captain and knocks him to the ground, which also knocks Dean's glasses into the water. The captain isn't knocked out, but he's pretty delusional now. And since Dean can't see, he says that he'll stay and keep the captain awake while Sean goes out to the sea alone to return the treasure.
Come on, Captain. Hang in there.
Here's your stuff. Hope you like it.
But just before Sean tosses in the final pieces of treasure, the captain passes out and the water demons swarm the boat. They grab for Sean, but he is able to pull away and throw in the final piece, which causes the demons to sink back into the sea. So, crisis averted. Or so they think. Because when Sean gets back, Dean is grabbed by a water demon, and Sean realizes that he still has the compass on him, and in the fastest resolution of all time, he just throws it into the water, and the sea spits Dean out a second later. Also, the captain wakes up right after.
What hit me?
That's not important.
So Sean learns that stealing is bad because it causes demons to come after you, and sometimes it tries to drown your cousin, so he's a good kid now. And that's the end. I do like this episode, but it is a little forgettable, especially since we've had quite a few stories now about kids who are kind of bad learning a lesson and then becoming good. But I do like all the water demon stuff, and the captain is really cool, and the sea scenery is really fun. So it's got some good, and it's got some meh. I think for the story, I'm gonna go with a 4 out of 10. The best part of this episode is hands down the captain and the actual water demons. Everything about them is really scary, from the way that they're covered in goop and rotten flesh, to the way that they wail about grave robbing and dragging their victims into the sea. It's also a pretty frightening idea that they only come up after you when you're sleeping, especially since I love sleep and I don't want no demons disturbing that. So for scares, I'm going with a 7 out of 10. I did really like the music in this episode. It's the first time in a while that the background tracks really stuck out to me. So I'll be giving this episode a bonus point for that, and I'll do another for the captain and the water demons. They were pretty rad, so they deserve a little bit of extra love. And I'll do one more point for Sean bonking the captain on the head, because that part made me laugh out loud. So we'll do 3 out of 5 bonus points, which leaves the tale of the water demons with a total score of 14 out of 25. And I hope you enjoy stories about the sea and sunken treasure, because there's more where that came from. This next episode is really special. It's called The Tale of Cutter's Treasure, and as the name implies, it's got pirates and treasure and heroics, but it's also got something that no other story in the original series has. It's got 2 episodes to tell us its tale, and not only that, but 2 storytellers. Frank and Gary team up for this one. For the last season and a half, they've both been trying to win over Sam's affection, and in a way, they become rivals. So having them team up for this story serves to show us just how strong of friends they really are. Sure, they may bicker and argue about who killed who, but in the end, they are 2 of the original members of the Midnight Society, so it's pretty endearing to see them come together for this one. Anyway, on to the tale of Cutter's Treasure. One of my favorite things about this 2-part story is the fact that now there's time for some really good setup. The intro shows a pirate named Ian Keegan sneaking into an evil captain's quarters, but where the captain usually sits is now just a skeleton, and Ian realizes that he's been duped. He's captured and killed by the ruthless Captain Cutter.
And may your death be a bloody one.
We're starting off with a little bit of classic killing. You know, this episode has a few moments that do push the boundaries of the series to their limits. It's pretty fantastic. We cut to much, much further in the future and meet our 2 main characters, which are 2 boys named Max and Rush Keegan. Max is the younger kid and is a constant nuisance to his older brother, being particularly annoying just as Rush is about to kiss his girlfriend.
Victory!
Also, we've seen Rush in another episode, also told by Frank, and one of my personal favorites. He's the main kid in The Tale of the Full Moon, so I don't know, that's kind of cool. The Keegan parents are leaving on a vacation and leaving their sons with a babysitter, but they pull a fast one on her by making her think that the vacation was canceled by speaking in a really deep voice.
The boys are sick.
Oh, well, I'm very good at taking care of...
They've got the measles.
So now the boys have the house to themselves. Rush wants the chance to learn how to make out with his girlfriend, but Max just wants to hang out with Rush. So as a compromise, Rush promises to buy Max a magic kit from a very familiar looking advertisement. And in the next scene, we see Rush is in the magic shop speaking with Sardo himself.
Look out!
And speaking of Sardo, don't wait to get your hands on some of our new merch. We've got hoodies, sweaters, hats, mugs, and 2 new shirts. One of them inspired by Are You Afraid of the Dark and our favorite peddling magician, Mr. Sardo.
No, mister. Accent on the toe.
We'll be making more designs in the future, but this is our very first launch of merch, so if you're looking for a great way to support the channel and get a little something in return, then take a look at the shop. And that's it. Back to Cutter's Treasure. For a couple of quick callbacks, Sardo does try to sell Rush some super specs, so he hasn't learned his lesson on those yet, and the magic kit that Rush buys is from Shandu the Magnificent, who was the magician in The Tale of the Magician's Assistant. I love this kind of stuff. On his way out, Rush notices a chest with a sign saying that whoever opens it gets a prize.
It doesn't open. Now, have you seen our vomit?
But when Rush tries, he opens it with no effort.
Mr. Sardo?
That's Sardo. No, mister. Accent on the... You opened it.
Inside the chest, they find a key, a spyglass, and the same knife that Ian Keegan had in the intro. Unfortunately, the spyglass is broken, and it is pretty funny because Rush gets to keep everything in the chest, but Sardo is making out with a much more valuable prize.
The man who gave me this chest said if anyone could open it, he would give me $5,000. $5,000. I'm a collector, you see.
Rush heads home and gives the spyglass and the magic kit to his brother, and then calls his girlfriend over for some smooching time. But oddly enough, Max is able to see something through the spyglass, so maybe it isn't broken after all.
This thing is weird.
When Max is alone in his room, the spyglass begins to spin and move on its own. It falls to the floor, but when Max reaches to pick it up, he's suddenly grabbed by someone that's hiding under his bed. This part is so rad. Him pulling off the glove to reveal a skeleton hand, it's such a great effect, and I mean, it's pretty dang scary. Because Max is screaming, Rush rushes in only to give us the classic scene where the monster has disappeared, and Rush now believes that Max was just trying to get attention. And due to Rush leaving her alone, his girlfriend decided to skedaddle, so Rush is even more upset with his younger brother.
I don't care about your problems. I don't care about you. I hate you. Get out of my life.
The boys head to bed, but Rush has an oddly vivid dream where he's wandering in a graveyard and speaks to the ghost of his old ancestor, Ian Keegan.
What he wants is not what he desires. Remember me words.
Oh, and Cutter's here too.
Are you a match for me?
He wakes up screaming and then checks the spyglass where he sees that same graveyard from his dream.
What?
Deciding that this thing is no good, Rush heads back to Sardo's shop to return everything.
Mr. Sardo!
Sardo! No, mister. Accent on the dough.
He puts everything on the table, and when Sardo tries to tell Rush that they belong to him now, he's stopped by a mysterious and yet somewhat familiar voice.
The boy will be back. And when he returns, send him to me.
Back at the house, Max is wandering outside when he somehow finds the spyglass sitting on a stump. And that's not the only strange thing, because he also notices a man is rowing his boat towards the nearby shore. When Rush gets home, he can't find his younger brother, but he does find a note stabbed into his closet door with the words, "This is no dream. The boy is mine." So he runs outside where he finds Max and that strange man just as his boat lands on the shore. But when Rush goes to confront him, at first all he sees is a skeleton. This effect is so good and it's way creepy. The way that you can see layers of muscle and skin reforming only for it to be followed by this insane man's face and cackle. It's such an effective moment. This insane guy is called Mr. Noise, by the way, and he chases Max and Rush into their house. When he corners them, the front door opens and through a blinding void, in steps the evil pirate, Captain Cutter.
After all these years, you're nothing more than a young pup. So be it then.
In a strange trance, Max walks to Captain Cutter, and he's scooped up and taken away. Rush runs outside just in time to see the pirates rowing his younger brother out to sea. Thinking quick, he looks through the spyglass and sees a mausoleum in the graveyard slam its door closed. so he has a small hint as to where Max might be. Now, in the overarching world, the Midnight Society are forced to stop this story here because it starts to rain.
Oh man, the story was just taking off.
But, you know, not to brag, but I've got the DVDs, so instead of waiting a week to continue, we can just watch part 2 right away.
The Tale of Cutter's Treasure, Part 2.
Part 2 starts immediately with Rush going to Sardo's shop. But Sardo doesn't know much about the situation, so he directs Rush to the man who left him the chest. This man is a barber, but we've seen him before, first as a researcher in the woods, then as a movie connoisseur, and a third time as a chef.
Vink's the name. Dr. Vink.
Dr. Vink?
Precisely.
Vink is back, and he's just as amazing as ever. Now he's mastered some new craft involving hair tinctures. We don't get a lot of information on his current endeavor, but he does explain a lot about Captain Cutter and his treasure.
They say he took the name Cutter because of his love for the blade.
It turns out that Cutter was big time evil, and the only man who ever got close to stopping him was Ian Keegan. Upon his death, Ian cursed Cutter, and all the souls of those Cutter had killed entered his dagger, which was scooped up and placed inside the chest, which would only be opened by a champion chosen by the souls to stop Cutter and avenge all the restless dead. Also, there is a treasure involved, and Vink really wants a piece of that to help fund his future experiments, so he's coming along for the ride.
I am not a nutbag.
Rush doesn't want to be the champion. He especially doesn't want to kill or hurt anyone, even if that someone is the ghost of an evil pirate. But Vink reminds him that his little brother's life is on the line here, so Rush doesn't really have a choice and reluctantly accepts his role. The spyglass ends up leading them to the cemetery, and Rush realizes that this moment is exactly the same as his dream, and just like in his dream, he's visited by the ghost of his ancestor, who points him towards a mausoleum and gives him the same warning that we heard in part 1.
Do not be fooled. What he wants is not what he desires.
Using the key from the chest, Rush opens the mausoleum, and it's definitely the right place, because this freaking skeleton comes to life out of nowhere and scares Rush into falling through a hidden trapdoor. Now he's in a secret cavern that runs beneath the cemetery, and the ghost of Cutter speaks and mocks him from above.
Not leaving so soon, are ya? You just came aboard.
Rush dodges and weaves through traps and twisted corridors. He's blocked by bars and nearly skewered by some spikes. Then he's shot at by a cannon, and the scariest part is probably when Mr. Noise pretends to be Max, only to jump scare Rush a second later.
Come on, let's go. Come on, what's it?
Just doing me job.
Mr. Noise raises his sword, but Rush uses the power of the dagger to just eliminate him on the spot. So, easy mini-boss fight done, and now we can move on to the big bad. Rush finds the treasure room, and Max is inside trapped in this giant, comically large bird cage. It's really funny. But waiting inside is also the ghost of Cutter, and he's rearing and ready for a fight.
Yes, I think you're looking for trouble, and Skipper, you found it!
All Cutter wants is a grand battle, so he raises his sword and starts to swipe at Rush. Meanwhile, Vink sneaks in, and while Rush is getting thrown around, he pulls an Obi-Wan and gives some helpful advice to his Padawan.
You're forgetting, lad. The dagger. Use the dagger.
So Rush tries to use the dagger, but it's just kicked out of his hand, and he's thrown back to the floor. Cutter is so rad, dude. He's so much fun to watch in this episode, just constantly laughing and just reveling in being evil. Just as Rush is about to be defeated, Max escapes and picks up the dagger. And now with the power of Brotherhood, Max and Rush use the power of the dagger to push Cutter back into a chair, and then vines sprout up and wrap around the evil ghost. Vink pops back up and says that the dagger should have the power to finish off Cutter, but Rush will have to stab him, and Rush just doesn't want to do that. Plus, he's not sure if he even can. Cutter is a ghost after all.
You cannot hurt me! I'm already dead!
And then, Rush remembers the words from his ancestor, the warning that says, what Cutter wants isn't what he desires. And what Cutter wants in this moment is to be cut down. But that isn't what he truly desires.
Use the dagger, and Cutter's wretched soul may be released from this prison.
No, it's not true!
It's a pretty fun and kind of sneaky twist. Cutter wants to be re-killed, which would release him from guarding his treasure and allow his soul to be free from this cavern. But as it is, Cutter is trapped here. His only link to release was through Ian Keegan's curse, so Rush decides to take that curse out of the equation. He breaks the dagger and traps Cutter forever. The breaking of the curse also causes the cavern to start a cave-in, so the brothers have to run and escape, and they make it out in the nick of time.
Curse you! Curse you!
As they're leaving the graveyard, they're visited a final time by the ghost of Ian Keegan.
Farewell, grandsons. Thank you.
Then the brothers head home. Their parents come back the next morning saying that they had a crazy vacation, and the brothers' bond grows stronger due to the adventure that they've shared. Oh, Vink also made it out of the cave. He just disappeared while Max and Rush's backs returned, but he does give them a quick visit the next day.
Sorry you didn't get the treasure you wanted.
It's the adventure, the excitement, the game. That's what stays with you a lifetime. Remember that.
Oh, and Sardo is here too.
What other little adventures do you think we might be able to cook up together?
And that ends the tale of Cutter's treasure. What a story! I love what this series does with its episodes, and devoting 2 to a single story, it just makes it that much better. We get full fleshed out story arcs, tons of interesting and unique settings, a villain with a history tying to the lore of the Keegan name, so much setup in part 1 that is paid off in a really satisfying way by the end. This one reminds me a lot of The Goonies with how fun everything was, while also being incredibly dangerous at the same time. Plus, the pirate treasure theme definitely gave me that vibe. The story isn't perfect, but it is really good, and even though it's twice the length, I had so much fun watching that it felt like the time just flew by. For the score, I'm going with an 8 out of 10. And it had some really great scares. It's definitely an adventure through and through, but the skeletons were all pretty spooky. That scene of the skeleton arm under the bed was way scary. Mr. Noise's face unmelting was also gross and rad and spooky. And then Cutter felt like a truly malicious villain. Plus all his lore about being called Cutter because he cut people up and killed them, you know, like that's pretty creepy. It had some great stuff sewn in between the harrowing and adventurous moments. So I'll go with a 7 out of 10 for the scares. And for bonus points, I mean, I don't even know what to say. It's gonna get a full 5 out of 5 without a doubt. I don't think I could choose only 5 things that I loved in this one. So, I mean, here's a quick list. Cutter is an incredible villain. I especially loved how much fun he had while in the fight and while mocking Rush. We saw a ton of sets that were all really cool and unique looking. The music was incredible all throughout the episode. All the skeletons were great. My favorite's either the arm under the bed or the laughing one in the mausoleum. I mean, both of those moments were fantastic. The effects were all fun, but the one that blew me away was Mr. Noise growing his skin back. Like, that was such a great moment. I thought the birdcage was really funny. That's maybe point worthy. I don't know. The Shandu magic box is rad. The moments of Max interrupting Rush's kisses were all really funny. The resolution of Cutter's fate was great and unexpected. Like, he's trapped there forever now. His soul was never put to rest, so he got the fate that he really does deserve. And I think that's it. That's totally all the bonus point worthy stuff. Oh, except of course for the fact that this episode has both Sardo and Vink in it. Like, are you kidding me? Dude, those two on screen together, both causing mayhem for some poor kids and for each other, giving us ongoing gags of Sardo's name and Vink being a nutbag, and then having them share that ending together and teasing us about future adventures between them. Like, without a doubt, this episode deserves a 5 out of 5. And there you have it, the only two-parter in the original series, The Tale of Cutter's Treasure, will get a total score of 20 out of 25. Now, as for who gets credit, I'll just be adding the score to both Gary and Frank's averages. 2 episodes, 2 storytellers, 2 added scores. It all seems fair to me, so they'll each be getting 20 out of 25 added to their score. And now, we can continue on to episode 6. But first, a moment of silence.
For this next episode, we have to be quiet because it takes place inside of a library. It's also
it's also pretty scary. I'm sorry, I don't want to whisper anymore. Just pretend I kept up the bit for this whole episode, because that was my plan, but it immediately just didn't sound very good. So, Kiki's first story of the season is called The Tale of the Quiet Librarian, and we've got a few really good intro scenes to set this story up. The first is this kid who's dressed up like our favorite cartoon aardvark. He's in the library when he drops his ball, and it goes all the way down into the library's basement, where he just so happens to stumble upon a hidden door for a place called the Quiet Reading Room.
Rats.
Nope, it's a door, but good try. The door opens, showing a purple light and something that causes Arthur to scream, but then his scream goes suddenly quiet. We see another kid a little bit later, this time a girl who stumbles onto that same room, and just like Arthur, her screams of fear become suddenly silent. I love the way that they do this. It's such a simple but effective edit, and it builds intrigue right away for what could possibly have done this silence thing. For the rest of the story, we follow 2 kids named Jace and Lori, who are classmates that have been assigned to work on a report together. They aren't really friends. Jace is a little bit of a goofball, and Lori's just a big old nerd, so she doesn't trust Jace to do any of the work. But you see, Jace is also secretly a nerd, because he wears glasses when no one else is around, but he forgets to take them off, and Lori sees for a moment that he might not just be a goofball after all.
I didn't know you wore glasses.
I don't. Usually.
Just like Betty Ann did in The Tale of the Whispering Walls, Kiki kind of shoehorns in this device that Jace plays with. It's literally just a noisemaker. I think they're pretending it's some kind of a game, but it's only in the episode because it's very, very noisy. Like I said, it's important for later, so we'll just put a pin in it for now. Jace decides that he wants to help with the report, but Lori is still just not trusting him, so they argue for a minute about who gets to do the homework, which is just backwards priorities if you ask me. They both storm out of the library, but Jace left Lori's notebook with the report draft inside the library. The next day, she realizes that her notebook is gone, and she asks Jace for help finding it, so don't worry about that argument because it just doesn't matter anymore. After dinner that night, they meet up at the library only to realize that it's closed, but Jace spots an open window, so he climbs on in and they begin their nighttime search for the notebook. I have to mention Jace's shirt here. It's just sliced in half and I hate it. It makes me think like 2 people were cut in half by a sword and then sewn back together, but on the wrong half. It's a bad shirt. Anyway, in the library, things are immediately strange. All traces of technology are missing, even the lights are off, so they have to use an oil lamp in order to search around. They head to the basement where they find a calendar from 1910 and notice for the first time the strange, quiet reading room. I love this imagery so much. Like, it's haunting how all the kids seem like corpses at first, but somehow it's just as scary when you realize that they're alive, but being forced to just silently read for what must have been decades, as, you know, now they're covered in cobwebs and dust. Like, I mean, they might as well just be dead at this point. Jace and Lori also see the two kids from the intro, but as they silently scream, they stumble out of the reading room. Then they see a purple glow and watch as an old-fashioned librarian enters the room.
There's room for two more.
They try to explain why they're there, but then the librarian opens her magical box and Jace's voice is instantly silenced. It's pretty funny to watch this kid try to pantomime from here on out, but it is a creepy idea to just suddenly have your voice taken away from you completely. And it's not only the voices that the librarian can steal, it's every sound. As vases are broken or things are dropped, she sucks up their noise into her box. And as she nears in on Lori's position, we can even hear that the librarian wants to silence her heartbeat. But Jace thinks fast and uses an old phonograph to distract the Quiet Librarian. When the librarian corners him, Jace just starts breaking stuff and causing the librarian to suck up the sound of shattering records. Then Lori comes to help, but she does a terrible job and just gets no voiced alongside Jace. So what are they to do? If only they had something that, you know, like I don't know, like made an infinite amount of sound. Oh wait, they've got Jace's noise-making machine thingy. So they toss that thingy to one another, constantly playing noise and filling up the librarian's magic box until it gets too full of sound, and then it explodes and releases all the noises that she's ever captured. So all that's left of the librarian is a pile of smoldering ash and her glasses. The kids are found by the library's night guard, but they end up not getting in any trouble at all because they also found the missing kids from earlier, so now they're heroes. All the other silent kids are also gone, so now they've been set free. And Jace and Lori realize that they can be a team, and they finish their report, and that's it. This episode was pretty alright. I think the story wasn't the best, but it is probably the scariest episode that we've seen in the season so far. With the story, there's just nothing that we haven't seen a lot of so far. Like, kids learning teamwork is good, but the noise machine is a pretty dumb element, and then the librarian is beaten really easily. I do love the intro scenes that we got. I think those little glimpses at the beginning set the stage really well for the library and the librarian. But other than the intro, I think the rest of the story was just in the okay category, so I'll be going with a 5 out of 10. But for the scares, this episode was pretty fantastic. The intros instantly added the idea that the villain is capable, and a capable villain is very terrifying. The purple ethereal light that the librarian uses is also a great way to add and build that terror. And then we've got those screams being cut off with silence. Like I said, it's a simple edit, but it was really effective. The scariest scene has to be when Jace and Lori first enter the quiet reading room. Like, I loved all the cobweb kids silently flipping through pages. That is fantastic horror. The only real downfall of the scares is how easily the librarian was beaten. It was just a little bit too sudden to be satisfying. So I won't be giving it a perfect score, but I will be going with a 9 out of 10 for the scares on this one. And then for a quick few bonus points, I love the screams being cut off by the silence, and I loved that cobwebbed kids scene. Like, there's 2 points right there. And then I'll do one more for the end explosion of purpleness special effect. Like, it looks so goofy and rad, so there's a point there too, which will leave this episode with a total of 3 out of 5 bonus points, and will leave the tale of the Quiet Librarian with a total score of 17 out of 25. I'm pretty sure that Betty Ann was inspired by the Quiet Librarian because she's our next storyteller, and her story also has an element of silence. Kind of. This episode is called The Tale of the Silent Servant. It doesn't have a lot to do with actual noise, instead it's part of the monster, but still, it is a pretty fun little theme that's cropped up in the middle of this season. To understand what the Silent Servant is, we see 2 men arguing over some strange bone. The owner of the bone throws it into a closet that's shaking until he commands whatever it is that's inside to stop. The other man is named George, and we'll catch up with him later. 20 years later, to be exact, because that's what we're cutting forward to. So now we follow two cousins named Jared and Anne, and watch as Jared throws a baseball right through his uncle's glass door. And if this uncle looks familiar to you, then you've got a good eye. He's the same guy who played Flynn from the very first episode in the entire series, The Tale of the Phantom Cab.
You might say, I sort of died!
But in this story, he's moving up a little bit in the world because he's actually alive. We also meet my favorite character in this entire episode, the older cousin named Mark. And he just comes across really genuine. He's a bit strict, but also kind enough to give good advice to his younger cousin and sister, and he helps them pretty often with their chores. I probably won't talk a lot about him in this episode because he's pretty off to the side, but it was nice each time he popped up. As punishment for breaking the window, Anne and Jared are told that they'll have to work off the cost of the new glass. First, they'll have to deliver some beans to a neighbor that lives a few miles away, and then they'll need to help Mark build a fence around their garden to keep away the deer. On their way to deliver the beans, Jared and Anne find an old abandoned barn and decide to take a look inside. Also, right in front of the barn is a small cemetery, and the old owner of that barn that we saw in the intro is dead now, and his headstone is the one with the fancy dragons on top.
People say that he was some kind of sorcerer, and that he had invisible servants work his farm.
Inside the barn, they open a door to find a really creepy looking scarecrow, as well as that bone that we saw in the intro, which also has dragons on it. And then we meet 20 years older George, who has gone completely mad, and he also says that he's looking for his long lost dragons. Yeah, it's very subtle about the dragons here, but I do love how crazy George is now. Like, he's got this whole rant, and he just traumatizes the kids while he's yapping.
I used to see rainbow-colored lights. Now, darkness.
Be forewarned. Once the word is given, it cannot be undone.
In a big brain play, Jared decides they should take the scarecrow home because that should be just as effective at keeping deer out as the fence that they're supposed to build. But I mean, the uncle doesn't go for it, so they still have to build the fence the next day. Also, they didn't finish their beans delivery, so 2 strikes for today, and tomorrow's looking real busy. That night, they play with the bone thingy, and Jared takes off one side to reveal a scroll that's hidden inside.
I don't think you should. Awaken, slumbering servant. Awaken, say your master.
Their final chore of the night is to take out the trash, but when they head outside, they turn and see that the scarecrow is suddenly right behind them. They run to tell Mark what they saw, but in a classic scene, the scarecrow doesn't move, so he thinks that they're just kids with wild imaginations, and he brushes off their story. In frustration, Jared kicks at the scarecrow, and as he does so, he gives it a few demands.
Why don't you fix the window and deliver the stupid beans while you're at it?
The next morning, the window is magically repaired, and the beans have magically been delivered. So now all the kids have to worry about is building this fence. While working, Anne keeps trying to convince Jared that the scarecrow is really alive and followed their commands, and that's how everything was done. But Jared is just, I guess he's thick-headed, and he needs another test before he believes what he's already seen.
I command you, finish this fence.
They leave for some supplies in the garage, but when they come out, the fence is fully complete. And Mark is so impressed that he decides to let them off the hook for the afternoon. And now's the part where Jared wants to take advantage of the silent servant, while Anne is scared because crazy man George rambled about it being evil. But Jared wins in the end and gives another command.
I command you, build me a dugout for my baseball field out back.
Calavector solemnos, cancel the command.
This Latin phrase was also mentioned by George, but he did say that the command to stop could only be given by the true owner of the dragon bones, so better luck next time, Anne. They head into town for a few hours, and when they come back, Jared's new dugout is complete. But they ask the question, where did all this wood come from? And a moment later, Mark yells at them, and they see that the beautiful fence has been completely torn apart. They try to tell Mark that it was the Scarecrow, but obviously he just doesn't believe them.
I have to ground you two. Here are your gloves. Stay out of trouble.
These baseball gloves, man, who knew they'd end up being super important to the story? You see, in the bag isn't the gloves, but it's tractor parts, so Mark mixed up the bags and must have taken the gloves with him to his baseball game. And Jared, in a move that would make Kevin from the Tale of the Twisted Claw incredibly proud, shouts this command.
I'd like to kill whoever did.
Yeah, he's got a magical evil Scarecrow that listens to his every command, and he shouts out loud that he wants whoever has his baseball glove to be freaking killed. So they rush to Mark to try and warn him, but he doesn't have the gloves either because he left them in the uncle's tractor since he thought they were just spare parts for the tractor. So the uncle has the gloves, and we get to see some really cool and spooky shots of the Scarecrow stalking through the field and inching closer to the uncle with pure intentions of straw-filled murder running through his canvas face. It's pretty rad. The costume is super simple, but ends up being really effective. Like, it is a pretty scary monster. Not knowing what else to do, Anne begs Mark to take them to the barn because she's realized that the only person who can stop the Scarecrow is his true master, and the true master must be the dead barn owner. You know, the one with the dragons on his headstone. They get there and Anne smashes the bone on the headstone, causing it to split in half, and a moment later, the Scarecrow appears behind them.
Calavector Solemnus. Go back where you came from.
The Scarecrow shrivels into nothing but smoking clothes and canvas, and the cousins all end up leaving together, happy that they stopped the demon. And then Mark is just confused. To keep the scares, we see Crazy George lift up the two pieces of the dragon bone and connect them. I've got some pretty mixed feelings about this episode. It reminds me a lot of the Tale of the Midnight Madness. Like, it's got a great monster, but the story is just a little bit off for me. It moves really, really fast, and they squeeze a lot of elements into it, which caused every scene to feel like it was just rushing to give us information so that they could eventually show off the cool and spooky Scarecrow. They try to give us some Scarecrow lore, but it turns out that the most relevant information comes from the crazy ramblings of George. The concept is cool. Having the evil servant that will follow your commands and can never be told to stop is a great idea, but the execution could have been better. I'm gonna go with a 4 out of 10 for the story. But that Scarecrow is pretty freaky. Every scene that we saw it in, even though most of the time it was just immobile, like, it gave me chills. And then watching it stalk the uncle and move around was pretty fantastic. I also really liked George and his whole rambling scene. Like, it was pretty decently scary. So I'm gonna go with 8 out of 10 for the scares on this one. And for some bonus points, I'll be giving a total of 2 out of 5. I really liked George, and it was fun seeing Flynn again, so we'll do a point for those guys. And then the music in this episode was really fun, and I loved the end scene of the Scarecrow shriveling away, so we'll do another point for those. Which leaves Betty Ann's Tale of the Silent Servant with a total score of 14 out of 25. This next episode is all about regrets, so while we ready ourselves for this one, make sure you don't have any regrets by subscribing to the channel. Just a quick shameless plug. These videos, they do take a lot of work to make, and a like and subscription does help let YouTube know that it's a video worth watching. So yeah, please do that. Anyway, this story is told by Sam, and it's called The Tale of the Room for Rent. And with this one, we get a definitive theme for Sam's storytelling. Last season, it was a little bit hard to tell, but now it's clear that she's all about tragic love stories. She's already had the tale of the Dream Girl and then the Long Ago Locket, and with this episode, we get a third tragic love story, so that's definitely her vibe. This story is about a girl named Jessie who lives with her grandpa, who recently had to move to the main floor due to his heart condition, so his room upstairs is now empty. And needing a little bit of extra cash, he decides that they should rent out the room.
Hey, you renting a room? I don't want to talk about it.
Jesse does a lot of work for a lady named Miss Simpson, who's a psychic of some kind, and when she's not working, she's hanging out with her best friend, Alex. She and Alex head to a movie, and their dialogue when they get back, like, it's so funny. Like, it's clear they weren't given much direction on what to ad-lib during the scene, so they tried their best.
Well, when the zombie came to life. Yeah, but the best was when the corpse started eating the people. Nah, that's entertainment.
On their way back, they stop by Mrs. Simpson's house, but are spooked when they see her doing some kind of ritual which opens up a portal of light from the ceiling, and then they watch as a ghost man descends from that light and walks through the wall and disappears. The music in this episode is so rad. Like, it's mostly this haunting piano that builds constantly until it starts to feel just a little bit overwhelming. Like, it's giving us a good idea of how Jessie is feeling as she's trying to deal with the ghost in this story. Like, I really liked it. So Jesse and Alex run home to tell Grandpa what they saw, but who's surprised when he doesn't believe them? The next morning, a man comes to rent the room, but Jesse recognizes him as the ghost that she saw the night before.
I'm here about the room for rent.
Wonderful.
He says his name is Mr. Browning, and Grandpa seems to recognize him for a moment, but brushes that off and decides that this will be the guy who gets the room.
Everything's going to work out just fine.
Jesse follows him up to the room, and Browning is immediately drawn to an old picture from Grandpa's war days. And I really like how his hand just goes right through the picture because, well, I mean, because he's a ghost. Not knowing what else to do, Jesse gets Alex and they head to Miss Simpson's house and tell her all about what they saw.
He came through my ceiling? Then it worked.
What worked?
Miss Simpson says that she was doing a ritual to call forth spirits who had unfinished business, but she was in a trance state the whole time, so she didn't see if it was successful or not. She also says that the ghost will have until midnight the next night to finish up his business before he'll have to return to the light, but if the ghost wants, he can also just take over a body and kick out that body's soul to take his place in death. And we see that start to happen that night. Alex sleeps over, and when they hear a noise, the two girls head down to Grandpa's room, only to see Mr. Browning hovering over Grandpa and beginning to enter his body. They run up to their room and barricade the door, but I mean, he's a ghost, so that doesn't really stop him.
Don't stand in my way.
The next morning, once again, Grandpa doesn't believe their story. I know that he shouldn't. Like, these are just kids and their imagination could be running wild, but the adult figure not believing the kids trope has come up a lot in the last 2 seasons, and I mean, it's getting a little bit exhausting. They head back to Miss Simpson when Alex notices another photo of Grandpa from his war days, and in that photo is the ghost man who's renting the room. So now we get all that missing exposition that we need to start putting the story together. This man in the photo is named Jacob, and he and Grandpa were war buddies in the Air Force. Jacob was also engaged to Miss Simpson, but she had fallen in love with someone else and never got the chance to tell him because Jacob died when his parachute malfunctioned. His death was ultimately blamed on Grandpa because Grandpa gave him the order to jump from their plane when it was hit. But Grandpa still ended up landing the plane safely on the ground. There's a little bit more to it, but that's all we're given for right now. The kids head back home, and this time Miss Simpson comes with them so that they can finally convince Grandpa of the danger that he's in. But the moment that she enters, her and Grandpa see each other and they just start to argue immediately. And eventually Miss Simpson storms out, so that went well. The girls decide that it's up to them to watch Grandpa all night and keep him safe, because at midnight, Jacob will be forced to return to the Deathlight. So Jesse heads upstairs and makes a big old discovery, but in the meantime, Jacob sneaks up to Grandpa and possesses him.
Where'd he go? You were supposed to watch him.
Alex is she's pretty dumb, but it does show that she got distracted by watching Dr. Vink's Nosferatu that we saw in the Tale of the Midnight Madness, so I guess we can give her a pass for that. They get a phone call a few moments later from Miss Simpson, who says that Grandpa is right outside her house. So the girls head over to Miss Simpson's house, and Jacob, Grandpa, is all like, I took over the body of this guy because it's his fault that I died. And Miss Simpson's like, yeah, it was totally his fault, but I forgot to tell you that I don't love you. And then Jesse's like, oh, by the way, I snooped and I found Grandpa's old war journal, and here's the big old reveal. It totally wasn't Grandpa's fault that you died. It turns out that he thought the plane was going down, and he gave Jacob the order to jump with the parachute, but it was the only parachute in the plane, so Grandpa thought that he was gonna die instead of Jacob, but miraculously he landed the plane, and the opposite of miraculously, Jacob's chute failed. And Miss Simpson's all like, Grandpa is the one that I loved the whole time. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, like this whole scene, it's just a really convoluted mess of dialogue. Like, I've definitely got some thoughts on this episode, but it's also really funny to imagine Jacob came back from his afterlife for his unfinished business and is immediately just told, no, you're wrong about your revenge, and also, by the way, the love of your life never loved you. Like, it's like, hey, welcome back from the afterlife, man. Your whole life was a lie. So then Jacob leaves Grandpa's body and he's sucked back into the light, and Grandpa wakes up and he and Miss Simpson end up getting together and finally living out their lost love.
Proving that it's never too late for true love to be rekindled.
So this episode isn't my favorite. It's got like all the pieces to be a good and interesting story, but it's told pretty poorly. The whole plot revolves around a little bit of a mystery on who the ghost is and the lingering love between Grandpa and Miss Simpson, but the whole time they just beat around the bush and do a pretty poor job of teasing at that twist. It's also a really predictable story, and that's not really a bad thing, but trying to make it unpredictable just ended up making it feel messy. Like, I don't know, this one, it just didn't catch me the right way. So I'm gonna go with a 3 out of 10 for the story. It did have a few good scary moments, nothing that I'd say was over the top or anything, but Jacob hovering over Grandpa was pretty scary, and him bursting through the door was also a pretty good bit of horror, and Miss Simpson's whole trance state during the ritual was pretty eerie. So I'm gonna go with a midline 5 out of 10 for the scares. And for a few bonus points, I really loved the music in this episode, so we'll do a point there for sure. And I also loved all the effects that they used. They ended up holding up pretty well with all of the ghost stuff and Jacob's hand going through the picture and him like being sucked into the light. But I liked it a lot. So we'll do 2 out of 5 bonus points, which leaves Sam's third tragic love story with a tragic score of 10 out of 25. The last few episodes have had kind of mediocre scores. I don't think they're bad episodes, but they didn't give us that special it factor that makes these episodes great. And I think Betty Ann caught on to that as well, because she comes strolling into camp with a story in her warped mind that sets the bar to a whole new high. And that story is The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of this episode is its style. The way it's shot, like the way the scenes transition, the music, the characters, the sets, even the pacing and the dialogue, it kind of feels like a trauma movie. Obviously a rated G version of a trauma movie, but the plot moves fast, the characters are all weird and somewhat uncanny, it's full of bright colors and sound effects. Like, it reminded me a lot of Class of Nukem High with how all over the place it was at times. And I gotta say, I love it. The main character is a kid named Ethan Wood, who's an aspiring comic artist, but when he gets his 20th rejection letter of the day, he doesn't handle it well, and he decides to rage around his room for a few seconds. But among the rejection letters is an invitation for him to come and visit the new comic book store in town, and since the invitation promises fun and prizes, he heads there right away. This episode is full of Easter eggs and callbacks to previous stories. I'll point out one or two later on, but this comic book store has so many of them, so I'll do a quick rundown of a bunch and then feel free to point out anything that I miss in the comments below. So there's tons of board games, including Dungeons & Dragons, on one of the shelves. There's a bunch of X-Men comics and superhero cutouts all over the place, including Wolverine, Spider-Man, Venom, Superman, Robin, Batman, Iron Man, and War Machine, just to name a few. I'm sure that there's a lot more that I missed there. And my absolute favorite are these 4 cutouts of monsters from previous episodes. We've got the Crimson Clown, the Skullface from The Tale of Watcher's Woods, the Knight from The Bookish Babysitter, and the fully transformed Keith from The Tale of the Dark Dragon. Like, it's absolutely fantastic. Ethan meets the shopkeeper, and when she hears his name, she gets all wowed and ends up breaking the fourth wall by saying this directly to us, the audience.
Uncas.
Pardon?
Sylvester Uncas. Who?
She also calls Ethan Cakes a bunch. I didn't like it. It felt a little bit forced, but I mean, whatever. When Ethan asks who Sylvester Uncas is, the shopkeeper goes to a briefcase and pulls out the only comic ever created by him.
It was so frightening. He only drew 1 issue, and then he disappeared.
Since Ethan's drawings remind her so much of this comic artist, the shopkeep decides to give him the Ghastly Grinner comic. The drawings in the comic are so rad. The art style is uncanny and uncomfortable, but also bright and cheery at the same time. And the way the Grinner torments his victims, like, it's so similar to how the Joker gas caused the citizens of Gotham to be stuck with large, creepy smiles. I love everything about the Grinner. But as Ethan is reading his comic in class, his teacher, who's talking all about microwaves, by the way, he notices Ethan isn't paying attention, so he grabs the comic and tosses it into the fish tank. But a girl in Ethan's class notices this, and she seems a little bit upset. I have to mention her right now because she does come back later on. Ethan's parents are so funny. They're just glubs sitting on the couch eating Cheetos and pretzels, and later they talk about making a waffle pizza. Like, they're without a doubt stoners, right? And they get mad at Ethan for reading comics in class. But Ethan doesn't really care, as he decides to put his comic in the microwave to try and dry off the pages. That's gonna turn out well. But of course, Ethan gets distracted by a phone call and ends up leaving the comic in the microwave for 10 full minutes. The call is from that girl in class, and her name is Hooper.
Hooper Piccolero, I sit across from you in Mr. Wright's science class.
As they're talking, the circuits get overcharged, and the microwave explodes with the comic inside. Running through a now smoke-filled house, Ethan grabs his crispy comic from the microwave, but now it's got a big ol' hole in the middle. In a super quick shot, we see the back of the comic, and on it are ads for Ren and Stimpy and the very show that we're watching now, Are You Afraid of the Dark? I thought it was really cool. But Ethan also notices another hole, this one in the wall, and this one shaped like a jester. But before he can process anything, his mom comes up behind him, and it's clear that she's been affected by the same thing that we saw in the Ghastly Grinner comic. Ethan runs to his dad, but he's been got too.
Heard any good jokes lately, Ethan?
Ethan runs outside and he bumps into none other than Hooper. He tells her that he's pretty sure that he brought the Grinner to life somehow, and Hooper doesn't believe him until her parents go over to the house, and after they enter, all that can be heard is weird laughing. So, not knowing what else to do, they head to the bus stop to find some help back at the comic shop. Now, I'm not saying Betty Ann stole this part from Frank, but she definitely got inspired by the tale of the Phantom Cab, because the bus driver turns his head all the way around just like Flynn did. Only this driver is way more creepy, and he's smiling with the Grinner's blue goo dripping from his mouth. He starts to drive all crazy, which forces Ethan to pull the emergency brake, and then he and Hooper flee from the bus while the driver is still just grinning and staring after them. It's so scary, dude. They finally make it to the comic shop and get some answers from the shopkeep, who reveals that she is the daughter of the original comic artist that created the Grinner, only she doesn't believe that the Grinner was created at all. Rather, that Sylvester Uncas used his art to peer into other dimensions.
He wasn't just drawing comics. He was creating guidebooks to other worlds.
Uncas was in the middle of writing an ending to the Grinner, but then he went missing.
Before he could finish, the Grinner got him.
Hooper has the idea that since a microwave brought the Grinner into this world, that maybe a microwave can take him out. But as they're planning, blue goo drips from above them, and we finally get to see the Grinner himself.
What's the matter, kids? Can't think of joke?
The Grinner takes the shopkeep while the kids run to a place that they know they can find a really big microwave. We're back to the science class, but the teacher comes in and gets mad at them for messing with his microwave. But don't worry, kids, because the Grinner will take care of that mean teacher. While the Grinner is busy, the kids flip on the giant microwave, but it doesn't do anything. Hooper grabs Ethan and they run back to the comic shop, where Hooper has another revelation.
Microwaves are the answer. We just weren't using them right.
She believes that the unfinished drawings of the Ghastly Grinner comics must have been the way to defeat the Grinner, and since Ethan's art style is so similar to the original creators, they decide to finish what was started. We get a really fun montage scene of Ethan gearing up with markers and pencils and drawing through the comics, and he finishes just in time, because the Grinner has tracked them down again.
What's the matter, kid? You don't like to laugh?
Sorry, I don't have much of a sense of humor.
I love Hooper. She's such a weird and dry character. Like, she's probably my favorite character of this episode, and that's saying a lot. To save Hooper, Ethan raises the finished comic pages and rushes at the Grinner, and the moment they collide, they're both transported into the world of the comic. I loved this part. The story continues, but through the pages of the comic book. We see Ethan all dressed up as a superhero now, and he and the Grinner fight, and since Ethan knows the Grinner's weakness, he uses a microwave to blast him. Ethan grabs the shopkeep and an old man that must be Sylvester Uncas, but he realizes that he has no idea how to exit the comic world. And even worse news, the Grinner isn't dead. It attacks Ethan again, but he's got help from the outside world. Hooper raises a comically large eraser into the air and goes to town on the Grinner, which of course ends in an explosion. This was the solution all along, and Ethan, the shopkeep, and Uncas are all returned to the real world, and the Grinner is defeated once and for all. Uncas gives Ethan the Grinner comics, and we see sometime later that Ethan finally makes it as an artist. And that is the end of this episode. So I think that this is my favorite episode so far. It has everything that I want in this series. Like, it's got a cool and unique story, it's scary, it's weird, it takes us to such strange places and gives us a terrifying and unforgettable villain. The story is fantastic. A comic villain coming to life, and the solution for defeating him to be going into the comic world and fighting him on equal grounds. Like, that's so cool. Not to mention the style of the way the story is told. Sometimes it felt erratic and nonsensical, but somehow those moments added to the insanity of what was going on in the scenes. The only part that I didn't love was the shopkeep calling Ethan Cakes, but she's such a minor character that it hardly bothered me. I did love how Hooper introduced herself constantly. I loved the transition scenes. I loved how the microwaves kept coming back into play. And I loved that comic book ending. Without a doubt, this story is a 10 out of 10. And it's scary. The Grinner is such a terrifying bad guy. We've had 3 clowns now, and I'd say he's equally on par with Zebo and the Crimson Clown. The comic drawings are also freaky, and all the victims of the Grinner as they laugh and drool blue goo is so fantastic. Not to mention the bus driver is in general just so rad, and the way he's just staring as the kids are leaving the bus was so creepy. It's really cool because the whimsy of the episode ended up adding a ton to the scares for me. There's just something that feels off when you get bright colors and goofy music and funny characters, and then you add in an element of fear. It's like constantly being on edge because you never believe that a scene can be entirely safe. I'm gonna give this one a 9 out of 10 for the scares. And the bonus points, like, I have to give it a full 5 out of 5. I loved the music and the art and the transition scenes. I loved all the callbacks, everything with the bus driver, the strange characters, the creative finale. I could go on, but there's just so much to love in this episode that it's kind of crazy. So without a doubt, 5 out of 5 bonus points. So holy cow, Betty Ann freaking killed it. This is without a doubt my new favorite episode, and the tale of the Ghastly Grinner will end with a total score of 24 out of 25. Like, I'm blown away. It was fantastic. I really want to know what you guys think of this one too. Like, I love things that are weird and overly stylized, but I know that my tastes might not agree with everyone, so definitely tell me how you feel about the Ghastly Grinner. But for now, let's move on to the next episode. Clearly, for the last chunk of this season, the writers were on fire. The Ghastly Grinner and these next few episodes are really good, but maybe they were cooking with the heat turned up a little bit too high, and because of that, they unleashed a spirit of a flame. This is my way of transitioning into Tucker's story called The Tale of the Fire Ghost. You see, it's like fire and heat and flame. You could say I was cooking with my analogy there. With this story, Tucker continues a theme that he started with the Tale of the Guardian's Curse, where the main characters have a broken family, and even more specifically, where they have a father who's too busy to spend any time with them due to his job. In this story, we follow brother and sister Jimmy and Roxy. Their dad is a firefighter, and he and his wife are recently separated. The whole episode, Jimmy's looking for someone to blame about the separation, but in life, things are just never that simple. While they spend the weekend with their dad, he still has to work, so they end up chilling in the firehouse with all of the firefighters. The lights flick on and off, and one fireman makes a joke about something called a fire ghost, which the other firemen all laugh about, saying that fire ghosts don't exist. Then the alarms go off, and all the firefighters head out to fight a fire, leaving Jimmy and Roxy alone in the fire station.
We'll do something next weekend!
The moment that the fire trucks are out of sight, the lights in the station go out, and the kids realize that the phone is dead. They get really scared because a moment later they realize they aren't alone. But the fear is short-lived as they find a lone fireman who was left to watch the station, and his name is Jake Griffin.
Looks like you're gonna be here for a while. Might as well make yourselves at home.
While alone with only candles to light the station, the kids ask Jake about fire ghosts, but unlike the other firemen, Jake fully believes that they exist. He talks about how fire is alive, it eats, it spreads, and he believes that it even thinks. So when firemen put out a fire, they are extinguishing the life of the flames. And with life, often comes ghosts.
Don't get caught by a fire ghost, my friends, or it'll pull you into its world of eternal flames.
He says that there is a fire ghost that haunts this very station, and it hates firefighters. And since Jimmy and Roxy are the kids of a great fireman, then this ghost will try everything it can to get them while he's away. That's such a great story to tell kids before bed. And as Roxy and Jimmy are getting settled in for the night, Jimmy notices a flickering light coming from downstairs. He goes down the fire pole to investigate, and not to brag, but my uncle was a firefighter, and I remember going to visit him and getting to go down the fire pole just like he did. It was such a blast. Like, it's such a fun memory. I don't know. I just, the thought of that being the most efficient way to get to the ground floor, and it just so happens to be fun at the same time, it's always just stuck with me ever since I was a kid. When Jimmy gets to the ground floor, he notices the flickering is coming from the equipment room, but he's distracted when the flame of a nearby candle suddenly grows, and it looks so cool as the giant flame burns over this little candle before it suddenly snuffs out. He goes closer to the room, but is stopped from entering when Roxy joins him below. And then, even though it's dead, the phone rings. The kids answer it, but clearly the phone is still dead, which is worrying since a voice begins to speak with them.
You're the son of a murderer, and your time has come.
A fire hose comes to life and creeps out of the equipment room before wrapping around Jimmy's leg and dragging him inside. At the same time, we see a fire suit come to life, wielding an axe and sneaking up behind the kids. It swings the axe and chops the hose so that it lets go of Jimmy. The kids run away but are stalked by the suit, only to realize that it was just Jake who was making sure to protect them from the fire ghost.
How do you know so much about ghosts?
Takes one to know one.
So Jake was a ghost all along, but not a fire ghost. I also love this little twist. It's the kind of thing that we normally would see at the end of an episode. So having it just pop up in the middle of the story, it's such a great subversion of our expectations. Jake tells the kids to get out of the station, but the fire ghost has put flames in front of the doors, so Roxy thinks quick and breaks a window, which they both slip through. Only to be out of the frying pan and into the fire, because they bump right into a police officer who gets mad at the kids for breaking that window. He escorts them back inside, but now the lights are working just fine, and there's nothing amiss inside of the equipment room. The officer wants to lock the kids inside of that room so that he can clear the station, but Roxy realizes that something is wrong, and when they turn around, the police officer transforms, showing that he was the fire ghost the whole time. He looks so rad, all sooted up, even his teeth all blackened from smoke, and he gets even cooler in just a little bit. It's also really fun how the hose in the background is spouting flames now. Like, they don't draw attention to it, it's just a really cool background detail. So the kids run away and they bump into Jake, who tells them that the only way to get rid of the fire ghost is the same way that they would get rid of a fire. We learn a little bit about Jake here as well, as he tells the kids that the ghost of this fire came from the same fire that he died in. He says that he and his partner were saving people from a burning building, and Jake went back to search for more, but his partner noticed that the roof was collapsing. He tried to get Jake out of there, but the roof fell, and he never made it out. And as for the partner, well, it turns out that it was Jimmy and Roxy's dad, which is something that he's never shared with them. So he's been going through this loss of his partner all alone. They come up with a plan to stop the ghost, and Jimmy goes downstairs to act as bait, calling the ghost out and distracting him while Roxy sneaks up behind it with a fire extinguisher.
You got it!
Jake congratulates them on a job well done, but the fire isn't out yet, as the ghost raises back up from the ashes. But then Jimmy notices the sprinklers in the ceiling above, and he baits the ghost into using its flames to try and destroy them. This looks so great, the fire all around the ghost, like the Human Torch just burning into oblivion. Man, this guy's so rad. But the flames do end up triggering the sprinklers, and the water finally puts the fire out and extinguishes the ghost once and for all.
Remember me to your father.
A bit later, the firemen all return to the station and the kids run to their dad with a new understanding on who he is and what he's been holding on to.
The fire ghost was never seen at the station again, and Jimmy and Roxy started spending a lot more time with their dad. The end.
This is another fantastic episode. Like, it's got a cool setting, it's got a really rad villain, some good twists, some great effects, and a good lesson that brings it all together in the end. I love the idea that fires have life, and therefore they could also have ghosts. And just like human ghosts, they would be after revenge for the one that snuffed them out. Plus, the whole story of Jake and the kid's father was, I mean, it was just really wholesome and overall well told. I think for this story, I'm going to go with a 9 out of 10. It was also decently scary. The fire ghost is freaky, his makeup was really effective at making him seem burnt to a crisp, and I love how malicious he was towards the kids the entire time. The use of fire in general during this episode was also like a decent use of scares. Flames getting really big out of nowhere or popping up where they shouldn't exist. Like, that's pretty frightening. The episode has a lot of good scary moments, so I'm gonna go with a 7 out of 10. And there are things that definitely deserve some bonus points for this one. All of the fire effects were really great, especially the fire ghost on fire. Like, I loved how he looked, so we'll do a point there. And I also loved Jake in general. Plus the twist of him being a ghost just in the middle of the episode was such a great moment. So we'll do a point for him as well. I'll do another one for the fire ghost. He was such a fun villain. I loved his makeup. And of course, I mean, I already talked about all the effects that he had on, but when he was all flamed up, that was one of my favorite parts of this episode. And then I'll do a final point for that lesson at the end. It was really wholesome and it was really beautiful as a moment, just all around. So we'll do 4 out of 5 bonus points, which will leave Tucker and the Tale of the Fire Ghost with a final score of 20 out of 25. Back in season 2, one of my favorite episodes was The Tale of the 13th Floor. Aliens and cool sets, weird characters, a scary but at the same time kind of silly vibe. It was a Betty Ann classic, and Kiki must have liked it just as much as I did, because this next episode is hers, and it feels a little bit like a sister story to The 13th Floor. It's not exactly the same, but they're definitely on that same wavelength. And this story is called The Tale of the Closet Keepers. Something pretty cool about this story is the main character. Her name is Stacy, her mom has it going on, and she is deaf. Despite being great at basketball, one of her, kind of friends named Billy doesn't like the fact that he can't give her callouts and that all of their plays need to be catered around Stacy's inability to hear. But she can read lips, and she catches what he's saying, which hurts her feelings and causes her to run away. So Stacy runs and hides inside of an abandoned building, although abandoned might not be the right word, because weird men in suits come walking down the stairs. Stacy hides but watches as they speak.
No geeks, no nerds, no freaks.
That's the same rule set I use for my cool club. You know what I'm saying? No freaks, no geeks, no nerds. Only really cool people and wizards and like you have to be able to do a flip. What I'm saying is I got a lot in common with these weirdos. So Stacy heads upstairs and sees a closet with a flashing light coming from the other side. She goes in, and then the room begins to spin before spitting her out on the other side, and she finds herself in a whole new world. This is where the 13th floor vibes really begin. The room she's in is futuristic and strange, and just like SpongeBob predicted, most things are in fact chrome.
Why is everything chrome?
Everything is chrome in the future.
Also, the room she came out of is it's like some weird... Hi. Hi. Also, the room that she came out of is it's some weird fleshy tube thing now. It's kind of gross, but it's also pretty cool. The tube closes and Stacy finds herself trapped inside of this strange new place. At the same time, we see what those weird suited guys are up to. They go to a basketball court and find Billy shooting some hoops alone. And I love their dialogue here.
You've got excellent moves on the court, dude.
That's the kind of cool swag lingo that leads you to know that these dudes are nar to the extreme. But they're also kidnappers, so that's gotta be a negative on the cool scale, honestly. They use a strange gun to paralyze Billy, and we'll be seeing him again in just a little bit. Apparently that strange gun that they use is an old ColecoVision Super Action joystick controller. Now, I don't know what that is, but Zyril sure does, so hey, thanks for the heads up in that, and shout out to you for this cool little fact. Stacy sees two more suited dudes getting ready to enter the flesh tube, but then she knocks over a thingy and alerts them to her presence. She runs as the alarms go off and projects some strange barrier into a room. Stacy doesn't notice any effect from this barrier, but she finds herself in a hallway full of caged kids that are all screaming for her to turn off the alarm while clutching at their ears. And then with nowhere else to run, the men capture Stacy and they throw her into a caged room as well. Man, the sets in this episode are so cool. Like, we go from that future room to a hallway full of kids' cages, and now a cage that's just painted like a kid's room. It's all so fun. But what is this place? Well, as Stacy is searching for a way out, we get a hint as a family of aliens drive by on some kind of cart and take her photo, as if they're tourists and she's one of the attractions. Then we meet the leader of the weird suited guys. Oh yeah, these suited dudes, they're called keepers, by the way, so that's what I'm going to be calling them from now on. The lead keeper, he's just so goofy and strange and kind of gross, and he explains that this whole place is a zoo, and the keepers are capturing kids from all around the world to display for his patrons.
Those who will pay handsomely for such an educational experience.
And despite one wall being open for possible escape, the leader shows that that isn't a great idea because crossing a threshold causes that strange barrier to come down, and he explains that it uses sound to paralyze any who get caught in its beam. He leaves a moment later, and then Billy is tossed into this room with Stacy. She does her best to explain their situation, and it's pretty funny watching her pantomime.
I don't get it.
A door opens up and now it's feeding time, and time for Stacy and Billy to meet the other captured kids. Each kid is supposed to be from somewhere around the globe, but they all just talk in the same, like, Canadian accent with perfect English. It's pretty funny. They're dished up some yummy green, but the British girl realizes that Stacy could be the key to getting them all out of here.
What's wrong with her?
She's deaf.
Don't you see? The keepers use sound to keep us in.
And after feeding time, Stacy reads the lips of the leader keeper and realizes that he knows something is off with her, and he wants her gone.
We have to get rid of her.
So now Stacy's on the clock, and she comes up with a plan for escape. She realizes that if they use reflective surfaces, the alarm won't go off. So she and Billy break a mirror, and she puts it over her head and sprints into the hallway of cages. Fortunately, the escape buttons for these cages are really easily accessible, and she frees all the kids moments before two keepers enter the hallway. They raise their noise gun controllers, but Stacy slaps on the alarm and paralyzes them, allowing the kids to escape back into the big fancy chrome room. One by one, the kids point to their homes on a map and enter the flesh tube to return home. Stacy and Billy are the final two, but before they can escape, the leader is back, and he grabs Billy and shoots his sound gun at Stacy. She thinks quick and just pretends to be affected by the sound, while backing up and then slamming the alarm, which stuns the leader and gives her and Billy a chance to escape. They stumble out of the closet and find themselves back home with a new appreciation for each other and a strong friendship in the making.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's the end of this episode. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this one reminded me a lot of the 13th Floor. Like, we've got fun characterized aliens, cool future-ish technology, and a tone that's both goofy and like sadistic at the same time. I really like the concept of the aliens wanting the kids for their zoo, and I loved the tourist aliens just driving by and taking photos. Like, that part is so fun. Plus, the leader keeper is like a silly, creepy bad guy, so that's a big plus for me. The story had a really good flow to it, and it seamlessly integrated the plot of the kids being captured by aliens with that subplot of Billy coming to understand that Stacy being deaf might make her different than him, but it doesn't make her worse in any way. I liked it a lot, and I think the only thing in the story that I would have liked more is a bit more time for that third act, because it did have to move at a breakneck pace towards the end. But with that said, I'll definitely be giving this story a 9 out of 10. But I don't think this episode was all that scary. Like, they leaned into the silly aspect of the aliens a lot, which I loved, but it did detract from the scary factor of the situation. I think the lead keeper had some really good creepy moments, and the idea of being captured and displayed in a zoo is pretty freaky, but a lot of the time it leaned into the feeling of whimsy rather than feeling of fear. So I'll just be going with a 4 out of 10 for the scare score. And for bonuses, this is another episode that deserves just a whole lot of points. I loved all of the sets, like, they were all around fantastic and weird. I mean, that flesh tube, what the heck was that all about? But I loved the suited dudes and their funny dialogue. I love the alien tourist families. I think the lead keeper did a really great job of being just a weird evil bad guy. I really like how Stacy's deafness was never a downside for her. It could have been something that was overplayed or used poorly, but it ended up being a great little element in the story rather than a constantly poked at impairment. And the whole subplot with Billy was really well done and ended up with a great little lesson. So without a doubt, this one deserves just the full 5 out of 5 bonus points. So the Tale of the Closet Keepers will end with a total score of 18 out of 25, and we can hope this run of great episodes continues with the next one. And I do have high hopes for this penultimate episode of the season because it's Gary's turn in the storyteller's chair. So we know that we're going to get something strange and magical. This one is called The Tale of the Unfinished Painting, and it stars a girl named Cody who's an artist but is having a hard time finding inspiration. Probably since she's always craving that nicotine, because this is the same girl from the Tale of Watcher's Woods who wanted to smoke cigarettes.
I'm not so sure I'm ever gonna know how to draw.
Her older brother Lucas is her biggest supporter and knows that she'll find inspiration soon if she keeps looking, so she does just that. And one day a young girl calls to her for a drawing, but when Cody turns her back, the girl runs away, leaving behind nothing but her hat. Cody chases after the girl with the hat, but loses her near a shop called the Hunter's Gallery. The owner of this gallery is a woman called Mrs. Breyer, and she's thrilled to have Cody in her shop because she loves to take on new artists as students to help them find guidance and inspiration for their art, which is exactly what Cody needs. Mrs. Breyer is also currently working with another student named Jenna, and we see that her methods are mostly normal, but she does have a strange restriction where the student will have to use her particular paintbrushes no matter what.
You know my philosophy. Inspiration comes from the artist, not from tools.
Cody finds one painting in particular that seems to call to her, so she reaches forward and is hit with inspiration in a way that practically pulls her into the painting. And the music in this episode is really cool, especially these dance scenes where we hear, I'm pretty sure it's a rendition of Swan Lake, but in a version that has like a weird, eerie, intense undertone.
Are you all right, dear?
Mrs. Breyer touches Cody's shoulder, which pulls her out of that strange trance, and then she offers Cody the chance to finish this painting as one of her students, and says that she can start the first thing in the morning. But of course, things gotta have a twist for the worst in this show, and we see that once the gallery is empty, Mrs. Breyer goes over to a cabinet that is filled with mystical things, including multiple paintbrushes, and this creepy ancient head. She does some kind of ritual on a paintbrush and speaks to the head.
Another lamb has wandered our way.
The next morning, Cody comes over and begins her work on the painting. And just like with Jenna, Mrs. Breyer gives Cody a paintbrush and tells her to use only that for this painting. While working, Cody runs out of paint and searches the gallery for some extra supplies. She looks into the mystical cabinet and thinks it's really strange, but when she touches a brush, she sees a painted image of a girl screaming.
Don't finish the painting. Destroy it before it's too late.
She wakes up from that nightmare and tells Lucas about the strange dream, but he thinks it's just her newfound inspiration making her brain work on overtime. But neither of them can deny that Cody has been drawing a lot, so she seems to have been making some progress thanks to Mrs. Breyer.
If it works, stick with it.
At the same time, we see that Jenna has finished her painting, and the next time we see this painting, one of the girls in it looks an awful lot like Jenna. Cody asks what happened to Jenna, and Mrs. Breyer says that she just left and she won't be coming back to the gallery. It's a little bit strange, but whatever, I guess. Cody gets back to work and she finishes up her painting later that day. But while she's looking for Mrs. Breyer, she finds Jenna's backpack and realizes that something bad must be going on in the studio. And that point is really drilled in when she notices a painting on the wall that looks really familiar. She calls Lucas to come and pick her up, but Mrs. Breyer finds her first and insists that since Cody finished the painting, she now needs to sign it.
I wouldn't feel right signing my name to somebody else's work.
You created the soul of this painting. Be proud.
But once Cody signs, the girl in the painting takes on her appearance, and Cody finds herself trapped inside. Lucas shows up and asks where his sister is, and in fear of being found out, Mrs. Breyer grabs Cody's painting and she lights it on fire. Lucas runs outside after her, but now in Mrs. Breyer's place is that same little girl that lured Cody to the gallery in the first place. Fortunately, Cody was able to bring her brush into the painting with her, and when she has the chance, she snaps it in half and finds herself suddenly released from the painting prison. She rushes to the mystical cabinet and grabs all of the other brushes, only all of a sudden, the freaking ancient head comes to life. So, Mrs. Breyer is a hunter for this dude, and she brings souls to him so that she can live forever. And also, she's this little girl sometimes, but not for long, because Cody rushes out and tosses all the brushes onto the burning painting, which ends up releasing the souls of all the trapped kids and causes the flames to burn with the ageless souls of Mrs. Breyer and the ancient head guy.
Cody's artistic block soon vanished because she was able to draw inspiration from all the spirits she freed from their living nightmares. The end.
So this is a pretty cool story. Like, it's so unique and it feels jam-packed with information. I mean, we've got an artist in need of inspiration, an evil soul-sucking art lady, the story of Jenna, the nightmare of the screaming painting girl, the freaking ancient head dude. Like, there's a lot going on in this episode. It's told pretty well, but it does feel like another one of those stories that just needed more time to breathe. Like, it could easily have been a two-parter and probably blown us away with the full story of the ancient head and his hunters. But with what we were given, it was really fast-paced and it didn't allow itself much time to tell its story. So for the story score, I'm gonna go with a 6 out of 10. It did have a few scary moments, mostly with the nightmare scenes and then that ancient head guy coming to life out of nowhere, but I didn't find this one particularly scary, so I'm only gonna go with a 3 out of 10 for the scares. And for a few bonus points, I loved the music, so a good point there. And I also really liked that ancient head guy. I wish we got a bit more of him in this, just because I have so many questions about it. But he is really rad, so we'll definitely do a point there. I'll give another for Cody, since she seems to have kicked her smoking habit, so, props all around there. And that will be a total of 3 out of 5 bonus points. So Gary's final story of this season gets a total of 12 out of 25 points. It was a good story, but man, I wish we got a little bit more because it had so much potential. But anyway, with that, let's move on to the final episode of this season. Just like last season, Frank is given the honor of telling us the final story. Each season he's given us some really unique ideas. Everything from plays on classic horror movies to a cabin in the woods to, that scary story about soup. And now he's got something completely new and different from anything that we've heard so far. Because this one is about trains, and it's called The Tale of Train Magic. Now, this story has a really good flow. It's interesting and it's a little bit sad, and I don't want to mess with that flow, so I'm going to do all the setup and mention a few moments right now so that they don't derail the story moving forward. The main character is a boy named Tim who loves trains, and in classic Frank fashion, we've got another character who is Tim's brother, who's also a little bit of a misunderstood bully, and his name is Hank. Their dad used to be a train conductor, but he died a few years ago. Tim still loves trains and hangs out at his dad's former station to feel close to his memory, but Hank has tried to move on and thinks that Tim is forcing himself to stay stuck on the idea of their dad. Every scene that we get of Tim in the train station is so sweet. He's befriended an engineer named Cap, but every conductor and worker in the station allows Tim to live out his dream of conducting, both as a way for him to express his interests and because it's clear that they all miss his father too, and having Tim around brings in a little bit of his dad back to the station. So that's the gist of the situation, and before moving on to the plot, we do get a quick callback to a previous episode.
Zeebo's Bakehouse just in. Let's play.
I love this. It's a callback to both the tale of Laughing in the Dark with Zeebo and also the tale of the Crimson Clown, where this exact game is first mentioned. Like, that's a 2-in-1 Easter egg right there. That's great. So one day Tim is walking along some abandoned train tracks when he runs into a strange old man.
I'm the conductor on the 713.
The man tries to hand Tim his pocket watch, saying that a watch is the most important thing for a conductor, as everything involving trains needs precision timing. But before he can grab the watch, Hank shows up and the man disappears. The next day at the train station, Tim asks Cap if there are any trains still running on those abandoned tracks, but Cap says that there hasn't been anything running there in over 50 years. But then the man shows up again, this time at Tim's house. He gives Hank a toy train car to give to Tim, which he starts to play with right away. But as the train loops around the track, the room begins to shake and a light of a train shines through the window. As the light grows brighter, Tim finds himself transported inside of the toy train car, now surrounded by strange people. Once again, Ray Lawson shows up and says that Tim will be the new conductor of this train. But Tim feels like something is wrong, so he runs to the emergency brake, and when he pulls it, he's flung back into his room, and he finds that that toy train has now been derailed. Something weird is definitely going on, so Tim heads to the train expert, Cap, to get some answers. He convinces the man that what he experienced wasn't a dream, and Cap seems to believe him, and then explains to the boy about something that he calls train magic.
Maybe it could have been train magic.
What's train magic?
Cap believes that trains have a life of their own and a language that they speak if only you learn how to listen. Because of these attributes, they hold some kind of strange magic that works with the train's conductor. And the most magical part of the whole thing is the conductor's stopwatch, since time is so important to everything that involves the train. Tim mentions the name Ray Lawson, and Cap actually knows him because he was the conductor of a massive train crash. A crash that was all his fault because he fell asleep and never checked his watch to change the train's track. Cap warns Tim to stay away from those tracks, but he doesn't follow his own advice. That night, Cap goes to investigate and actually finds the ghost of Ray Lawson.
Leave the boy alone. Get on your ghost train and go.
Can't do that.
But the train magic is strong with this conductor, and he uses his stopwatch to put Cap into a trance and forces him to become a passenger on his ghostly train. It's pretty cool because Cap now shows up as a little figurine inside of Tim's toy train, and he realizes that he's got to do something to save his friend's life, and he might be able to stop the evil conductor at the same time, but he'll definitely need help. So he tells Hank about what he believes is going on. At first, Hank doesn't believe him, but then the toy train starts up on its own, and the clock begins to move faster and faster, so Hank gets pretty easily convinced after that. Hank heads over to the abandoned train tracks, planning to flip the switch and finish the conductor's never-done task, but that switch is stuck, so we'll have to come back to that a little bit later. Tim plays with the train, and just like last time, the room shakes and lights up, and he's transported back into the train car. When he tries to pull the emergency brake this time, he finds that it no longer works because Ray Lawson disconnected it, and is now forcing Tim to take his place as the new conductor, where he'll be forced to live the night of the crash over and over for the rest of his life.
713 crashed 80 years ago, and it's been doing it ever since.
Tim is initially put into a trance by the pocket watch's magic, but he snaps out of it and throws it to the ground before stomping on it and breaking it. This action seems to unbind the stuck switch, so Hank pulls it and swaps the tracks at the final moment. In an instant, Tim and Cap are back in the real world, and the ghost of the train has been allowed to continue down the tracks. But the conductor is still stuck. He wanders down those tracks alone, forced to know of his mistake and wander trainless for the rest of existence. I think that this is a pretty beautiful story to finish the season with. It's got a great message and a really fun concept. It moved pretty quick, but it never felt overly rushed, and I really like how evil the conductor secretly was. Like, at first it doesn't seem like he's all that bad, but then you realize he's trying to get Tim to take his place for eternity, and yeah, that's straight up evil. So it was kind of cool to be lulled into this false sense of good intent initially. I think the story was pretty good. It's not the best in the season, but it definitely deserves a 7 out of 10. But unfortunately, it wasn't really all that scary. Like I said, Ray Lawson was a decent villain, and then the idea of being trapped on an ever-crashing train is pretty scary, but overall it was fairly light. So I'll only go with a 2 out of 10 for the scares on this one. As for some bonus points, I love this idea so much, leaning into the theme of trains like so heavily. It was really fun. And then having Tim be all about it with the toy trains and chilling in the station due to the memory of his father, it was also really sweet. So I'll do a point there for train stuff. And I've got to give a point for the mention of Zeebo's big house. It's a great little callback, and I always love that kind of stuff. So 2 out of 5 bonus points, which will leave Frank and the final story of Season 4, The Tale of Train Magic, with a total score of 11 out of 25. And there you have it. Season 4 is complete, leaving us with only one more season in the original series. As I keep watching the show, it continues to surprise me with just how good some of these episodes are, and how good overall it's stayed as a series. With this season, it felt like the showrunners were really hitting their stride. We got some of my favorite and what I would call the best episodes in this series during Season 4. Not to mention the two-parter episode of Cutter's Treasure. I mean, that was so fun and new. It's great to see that they were able to stretch the concept of the show just a little bit to give us something that was new and exciting. So, let's talk about the stats and figure out the best scares and stories in this season, as well as in the series so far. As with the previous seasons, I've kept a running total of everyone's story, scare, bonus, and total points. This is the first season where every member of the Midnight Society got to tell at least 2 stories. In fact, Gary is the only exception for this season. He had the most stories told, with 3 this season: the tales of the Renegade Virus, Cutter's Treasure, and the Unfinished Painting, while every other member tied for the second most stories told, with 2 apiece. My least favorite story of the season goes to Sam, with the tale of the Room for Rent, which was interesting but overall pretty poorly told and scored a 3 out of 10. While my favorite story of the season goes to Betty Ann with her really awesome tale of the Ghastly Grinner, which showed us that not only is she the queen of horror, but she also knows how to make her stories interesting, unique, and compelling. The least scary story of this season also goes to Sam, with her tale of the Long Ago Locket, which didn't feel like much of a scary story and rather felt like a tragic romance, and it only scored a 2 out of 10. But we did have a tie for the scariest story of the season, as both Kiki's The Tale of the Quiet Librarian and Betty Ann's The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner told stories of true horror, and each scored a 9 out of 10. If I had to choose between the two, I'd say that the Ghastly Grinner is a bit scarier, but I know I'm biased because I loved the Ghastly Grinner episode so much, so sorry, Librarian, but the clown's gonna take it for this season. Taking all the points together and adding up the story, scares, and bonus points, my least favorite episode of Season 4 goes to Sam, with the Tale of the Long Ago Locket's score of 9 out of 25. Sam she missed the ball on her stories this season for me, but hey, it happens to the best of us. On the other hand, Betty Ann swiped the board for my favorites in Season 4, as she also scored the highest total score with the Tale of the Ghastly Grinner, which had a nearly perfect 24 out of 25, and marked this episode as one of the greatest in the entire series. Now, let's compare these new scores to the previous seasons and calculate the new averages for the Midnight Society Storytellers. My current least favorite story of the series hasn't changed, and hopefully it never will, because Tucker's Tale of the Midnight Ride has the lowest possible score of 1 out of 10, and I still just flat out don't like it. But we do have a contender for a new favorite story. Season 3 had one of my favorite stories with the Tale of the Bookish Babysitter. It scored a 10 out of 10 and gave us everything from a lanky ghoul man dressed as a little girl to a tomb haunted by a ghost of an old king. But with this season, we've got another 10 out of 10, this time from Betty Ann with the Tale of the Ghastly Grinner. I love both of these stories so much. It's pretty hard for me to say if I like the genre-changing themes of delving into multiple stories that we saw from The Bookish Babysitter, or if I like the uncanny, goofy, comic-based style of the Ghastly Grinner more. I love them both so much, but if I had to choose, I think I'd say the Tale of the Bookish Babysitter barely edges out the victory for me. Mostly due to the babysitter's haircut, to be fair. Like, when you've got to do like that, then it just exudes brilliance. As far as the least and most scary stories of the series, well, those scores haven't changed. The story I find least scary still belongs to Kiki with her Season 1 story of the Tale of the Captured Souls, which scored a 1 out of 10, while the most scary still belongs to Gary with the Tale of the Crimson Clown's perfect 10 out of 10. And as for totals, well, my least favorite overall story of the series still belongs to Tucker with his pretty terrible episode, The Tale of the Midnight Ride, which wasn't very scary and wasn't well told, and is still the only episode so far that I just don't like at all, which is reflected in its 5 out of 25 score. But I'm really happy to say that I've got a new favorite episode thanks to Season 4. It's been pretty incredible to see each season stepping up its game, and this season was no exception. Previously, I fell in love with Season 1's Tale of the Dark music, but shortly after that, the Tale of the Full Moon became my favorite, and then the Tale of the Bookish Babysitter stepped in and overtook the highest score, only to be dethroned by Betty Ann this season with the Tale of the Ghastly Grinner, which dwarfed the Bookish Babysitter's score of 21 with its new and nearly perfect 24 out of 25. So far, this has been my favorite episode of the whole series. The story it tells is fun and interesting and stylized, and the scares it gives are chilling and uncanny and just perfect nightmare fuel for children all around the world. With how much I loved it, I have no doubt that this is one of the best episodes that we'll see in the entire series. So, with that all said, let's see what changes to the averages this new season will give to each of our storytellers. In last place, we've got David, who stands at an average of 12 between his 5 stories. Next is Sam, who had a bit of a downfall, going from the top-rated storyteller to nearly last place, with her new average of 13 between her 4 stories. Next is Tucker, who jumped a few places, going from last to not quite last, with his new score of 13.8 between his 5 stories. He's followed by the missing man from Season 1, Eric, who stands at a score of 14.5 between his 2 stories told. And then Kristen with her 14.8 between her 5 stories. Next up is Kiki with an average of 15.7 with 7 total stories told. And in third place is Frank, who I messed up the math in last season, by the way. He was secretly tied with Sam for first place, but I'm dumb and added one of his stories twice, so sorry, Frank. But I did check the math multiple times for this season, and his third place average of 16.1 between 6 told stories is definitely correct. And then in second, we've got the Midnight Society's leader, Gary, who averaged a score of 16.5 with his 8 total stories told. And the new first place, retaking her crown from Season 2, is Betty Ann, who barely outscored Gary with her score of 16.6 between her insane total of 10 stories, which makes her the storyteller that we've heard from the most in this series so far, and names her the best scary storyteller in Are You Afraid of the Dark? At least for now. And with all that, we can wrap up the season and declare this meeting of the Midnight Society officially closed.
Big story. Big stories.
I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed.
It's crazy how much more I love this series as I continue to watch it, and I've got to give a big thank you to all of you for watching these videos alongside me. It's been awesome to hear your childhood memories and see what things scared you or what storytellers really struck a chord with you as you were watching these episodes. These videos do take a lot of work to make, so if you enjoyed, then please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel to help push the video out there and so that you don't miss out on what I upload next. And if you're looking for a good way to give a little extra support, then consider joining these lovely people and becoming a YouTube member. It's only a few bucks a month, and it will give you access to a few behind the scenes videos as well as hints on future projects that we're working on in the background. Plus, you'll get your name read out as a little personal thank you, just like Nicole, Igor DaCosta, Reaver Approach, Shelly March, Kura Kula, Zed Ziggy, Super Suplex, Stu the Human, Bogmeyer Sandman, I Was Like Emilio, Jessica Martinez, Puke97, April Farmentino, and Herr Libuaka. I definitely said that wrong. Sorry. And yeah, that's it for this one. So I'll see you next season. Bye-bye.
There was. All right, the phones work.
Still dead.
But it just rang.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. And right now, you can save